This is the American Sniper range, and I'm going to show you a few little hints in case things don't seem to be going right. So if it's an auto fill machine, make sure this is connected to your laundry tap. That fitting will only fit a laundry tap, it won't fit the outside tap. If you need to fit it to an outside tap, talk to Tam and he'll get you one of the little fittings. If you've got it all connected and you can't seem to get water into the machine, make sure the tap's turned on. Now, another thing that you need to do is when you go to power up the machine and you find none of the switches work, just check that the power point's actually plugged in and switched on, and if that's still not working, check the circuit breakers. And a quick way to check to see if the power is on is to just grab a lamp, or you can actually buy a little power point tester. You plug it into the end of your lead just to make sure that the power is actually on at the power point. Now, a couple of things you might want to watch. This machine is quite powerful and it actually needs two complete power circuits. Don't plug both cords into the one power point. Make sure you plug one into like a laundry plug and another one into a kitchen plug, and that way you're going to be sure they're on two separate power circuits. Otherwise you could be tripping circuit breakers. Now, the machine does actually have some built-in protection, and that's these two little buttons down here. If one of those pops out, just push it back in, check that it's all working, and off you go again. Another little thing to watch is these air intakes here. These are for the cooling on the back motors. So just make sure you haven't got curtains blowing up against there or a towel hanging close to it, or just make sure that's nice and clear so that you've got plenty of airflow into the motor to keep those cool. Righto, next thing we need to look at is the pressure. The pressure line. We've got pressure coming out to the wand, which is going to be doing the cleaning, and sometimes we can't seem to get water out to the pump, from the pump. So we might just have to prime that pump. To do that, we simply connect that little hose into there, we poke it straight into the vacuum hose, and we seal it off with our hand, switch on the vacuum, and that will suck water from this tank in through the pump and get rid of any airlocks that you might have. You can get airlocks just from the machine sitting around, or if you've emptied it the day before and there's a little, you run right out of water, it can get an airlock. So when you start to fill it, sometimes the airlock will stop it from pumping. So just run the vacuum for a short time until you see the water coming through this little pipe here, and then your pump will be ready to go. Connect up your hoses again. Always make sure it clicks into there, and that's a nice tight fit onto there, and away you go. Another thing that can go wrong is sometimes we'll be cleaning and we've just got no water coming out. We've got a lot of pressure, a loss of pressure rather. Just check a couple of things. Is the machine full of water? Does it have water in it? Or could that little mushroom filter be blocked? That sits down the bottom of the tank over the inlet to the pump. So right down the bottom there is this little filter. Just make sure that's nice and clean. I'm going to show you something else in here. Inside the vacuum, this is where all the dirty water comes back inside that big tank there, and there's this little ball valve in here. If the water fills up too high, the air will push that ball up and it'll stop the water going down in through your vacuum motors. Sometimes you might get a lot of fluff coming off a carpet, particularly on some cut-pile wool carpets. You'll get a lot of fluff build up around there, and if that blocks off with fluff, that will cut your airflow down. So just pull these out, clean all that off, pop them back in, and pop the lid back on. Make sure your lid's on nice and secure to give you a good vacuum seal. So we start the machine up and we think, oh, I don't know if there's enough suction there. What could be wrong? It could be that you've forgotten to close this dump valve. So just make sure that's always down, and then you'll feel the vacuum bite in. With a wand, we've got these two jaws on the wand there, and those two have to be sitting flat on the carpet. If we're holding the wand down too low, the air is going to rush in through the front of the wand and we're not going to pull the water back out of the carpet properly. If you're holding it up too high, the same thing will happen from the back end there. Now I see some people working a wand and they back up to a wall, they get to the wall and they lift the wand up there. We're going to have a real wet patch on that carpet there, so just make sure that when you're bringing the wand back, it always stays nice and level. Now it needs to be around about hip height. That handle is just there, just to lift it off the floor if you need it, but most of the time you find, work the wand standing upright, the wand falls down onto the trigger, opens the trigger valve, and that's as much work as you need to do. Let your machine do the work, that's what you're paying for. So we make our cleaning pass and we just move our body with that wand. And that's about it. So just make sure your machine's plugged in, you've got water, you've primed the pump, your vacuum's all sealed and you're getting good vacuum. You should hear the noise of the rushing air through the wand there, and if you've got all of that going on, you're fine. Now after a while these hoses can develop little cracks in them. If you hear a lot of hissing going on in the hose rather than on the head of the machine, you're going to be losing vacuum. So if your hoses are starting to leak, time to change the hoses and get new hoses. They do crack up after a while. Another little thing here is sometimes this little fitting on the end here can work loose. That's a backwards thread on that, so it threads on the wrong way. Just make sure that's nice and tight and you'll get a good seal in there as well. Any loss of suction that you're getting is probably just a leak somewhere. So yep, good solid hoses, good tight fittings, everything's fitting, and don't forget when you put the wand down on the floor, be lazy, put it down like that, and that stops the pressure on that fitting down there. And another thing that can happen too is these quick connects might have just come adrift if you've just bumped that just a little bit. Sometimes they'll unclick. Make sure they're clicked right home. If they're still not getting water through there, just check the little pins on there are still in good order. If they work themselves flat, you'll find you can actually have a situation where there's no water will get through there. If you've got pressure down to here, we can actually have a blockage in the little filter inside there. So in behind the jet is a little tiny filter. Grab your spanner, undo that, take the filter out, give it a good thorough clean and put it back in. If you're getting any uneven spray, you might have a little partial blockage in the jet itself. So just clean those out, put the filter back in, screw that back on, make sure you've got your alignment right on those two sprays, and away you go. If you don't have a nice even spray, you won't end up with a nice even finish on the carpet.